to the Truth and Data podcast, where we tackle a different digital forensics topic each week. I'm Jessica,
I'm Debbie.
and we're excited to have you here today. Today, we're going to discuss networking. And when we're talking about networking, we don't mean networking cables. We mean actually coordinating and communicating with other people in the digital forensics field, which for some, um, there's a lot of us in this field who are very, very technical. So this might be out of some people's comfort space and definitely something we wanted to attack during this very active conference season. There's already been a bunch and there's a lot more. And so we want to take a moment to help people think about new ways to connect with people. And this is meant for both veterans of the industry as well as those breaking in.
When I started networking, I don't really think I knew that that's what I was doing. When I still worked for the GBI, I was networking for my agency. I was networking for the people in my office. We needed connections across the country and really around the world, and with tool providers and other experts in the arena that could help us with our cases. And
Absolutely.
I didn't really know that that's what I was doing or realize that's what I was doing. I was just trying to help everybody in my office and get us what we needed. And later on, really sort of after I left law enforcement, I realized that I had sort of built this really cool, amazing network of people that I could rely on in a variety of ways. And it has really helped me tremendously.
I love the fact that you're starting with that because a lot of times when people hear the word networking, they think, oh, getting a new job. And that is not what we're
Right.
talking about. We're talking about the fact that we all see new and different things every day on our cases, and who is your go to person. We also, different people have different expertise. Who is the expert in that who you can reach out to, or that you can send that to, or that you know who to ask, or who do you communicate when you have a problem with a tool or at a vendor or you need support? Who do you reach out to in another agency, or if you have something that's overlapping, or if you have a question about something in a publication?
Right.
We need to be able to have that community. And also, having that community just gives you people to bounce ideas and concepts off of. And I think I don't think people realize that you have to have relationships outside of your office. And I think that's important. There's importance in actually networking within your agency as well, or within your
Of course.
organization, because sometimes if we just stay in our own teams and departments, we don't know how to get things solved in the bigger picture. So, for example, it might be really, really important to have connections in media management or the evidence control room so that you know when big cases are coming in and can adjust your
Right.
staffing. Or it may be important to have those relationships with upper management so that you can actually get the support you need when you need to procure a tool, that people understand what you
Exactly.
do and the value of your work. But then, like you said, outside your agency to ask questions, or with vendors. So we're going to be talking about all of that today.
I like your example of advocacy within the organization because that is vitally important when, like you said, when we're talking about asking for new tools or support for wellness initiatives or anything. Just, I really think networking a lot of times is educating, but also seeking education. Like if we talk about why, I mean, you've mentioned some of these, but why we would want to network in digital forensics. You've mentioned knowledge sharing,
Hmm.
obviously. You mentioned problem solving, staying current. I mean, emerging threats, new legislation, advancements in forensic tools, or new challenges with phones, just in general.
Or even
Um,
people who are going to ping you and tell you when something cool came out, right? Like
yes.
like yesterday, I mean, not to get super nerdy, but
Oh, let's do it.
Jonathan Levin announced a new book yesterday, right?
Right.
And Caesar pinged me and told Nick and I about the book, And then I turned around and pinged a group digital forensics chat that I'm part of and said, hey, look what just came out. Um, you know, so sometimes it's even just important in terms of us sharing information about new things, but it also could be something like, oh look, AFU reboots. I'm now seeing that on Chrome, on on Pixel devices, not just on iOS and Graphene. And you're thinking about all these changes that are happening. A lot of times how we're hearing about it is direct communication with each other or sharing articles with each other. So
I love the fact that you have a digital forensics chat.
Oh, I'm in more than one. I don't know if that's good or bad,
I'm
but
sure. I'm sure. There's so many different ways to network. Obviously, a lot of us are on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. There's other places to go, and then from there, sort of grows what you're talking about. And I'm sure you've developed your network over years and years of your
mhm.
career and conferences and online and things like that.
And
But what
school
are
and
some of the ways?
classes.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
so I think that we can put, how we meet and communicate with people into two large buckets, right? There's the online versions of these communications where we build relationships, and then there's the in person. And I know that I have sometimes built relationships with people digitally in our field, virtually, that I didn't even realize that I didn't know them in real person. And then you meet them in real person. It's like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, I
All the
just
time.
realized now I didn't know you in person. And ironically, I used to feel that a lot more pre-COVID, right? Pre the world shutting down and
Hmm.
everything go virtually, because I think that our field was unique in that we did have so much comfort in digital conversation as people who live in the digital
There's a lot of
space.
collaboration online
There
in the
is.
digital forensics community.
And so let's separate those two.
Separate them.
Which do you want to tackle first? Kind
We'll
of
talk.
like
We'll
this
talk about
virtual
online
or
because I think it leads. They're connected,
they're
but
connected
we'll.
for sure. For sure. So in the virtual world, right, you've got a couple of different things. You've got virtual events that take place. So things like the Magnet User Summit, or I've participated in some OSINT challenges, CTFs, those kinds
Yes,
of things that happen virtually. Um, we're going to be putting on the Digital Frontline full day webinar. If anybody's
related to ICAC.
related to ICAC, if anybody wants to join up, that's June 16th of 2025. I have no idea when anyone's going to hear your podcast, right? Uh, so if you want to sign up for that, that's a full day free for law enforcement. But all of those conversations, some of the SANS DFIR summits, the Slack rooms on those, some of the B-sides events, even DEFCON. So sometimes these virtual events will have Slacks or places like that. Then there's more of the traditional social media realm, which this could include your LinkedIn, but also could include things like the digital forensics Discord server. And I
Exactly.
feel
That's one of the best places to go to. I don't want to say meet people, but to see how the community operates.
see what the big to me, I can kind of see trends with big issues where
Hmm.
people, but there's 10,000 people in there, they're having a conversation. I would say there's a big difference between the digital forensics Discord server and the listserv. So
Yes.
there, if you're a member of HTCIA, which kind of bridges the realm between in person and virtual, because they have both, but that listserv um, is immensely, in the IASIS listserv, immense amounts of communication happening and networking. And so a lot of these conversations start off technical, and you start to pick up on who is the go-to person. And then you have social media, and a lot of people are wary of social media. And
I understand.
to be honest, right now, and this is probably a fair place for me to say it because I won't say it on social media, um, due to a recent public case that I have, and we'll leave it at that, I am actually on a social media hiatus. So please don't be offended if I don't see your social media messages. Whereas I have historically been prolific on places like Twitter and LinkedIn talking about things in our industry, I am currently on a social media, we'll just say break for a little while.
You'll be back.
Once things calm down, I'll be back. I promise. But just know that for my mental health and my safety, I'm just not there currently. And uh, please, if you want to know what I'm up to, follow Hexordia. But I'm not on there right now. But historically, I have built relationships. I mean, Twitter used to be where before it became X, where everything digital forensics was. I'll say there was that change when Twitter became X, where there were a lot of people in digital forensics who stepped away from that platform. The algorithms changed and what you saw changed, and there was a little bit of movement to Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads. But to be honest, none of those have really taken off in the same way that LinkedIn kind of has filled that
Right.
void. So I really feel like LinkedIn is different. And I'll tell you one nice thing about LinkedIn is people are there on true name, which is nice, but not everybody, because of our profession, not
Right.
everybody can be on LinkedIn. So I feel like now you got to kind of patchwork that more together, whereas it used to all be on Twitter. And now you're piecing together X and Blue Sky and
Right.
Mastodon. Luckily, there are things for you to, if for outgoing, where you can post to all at once, and there's several of those that are um, free. So that's one thing. I would say listservs are great. Digital forensics Discord server is great. A big difference between digital forensics Discord server and the listservs is the listservs, those are vetted private communities.
Right.
And Discord, remember, you don't know who anyone is on the digital forensics Discord server. And um, they may not be who they appear to be. So we'll there's light vetting, but there isn't
Sure.
severe vetting. Like if somebody's on HTCIA, they've had a background check.
It's the
We've
same thing
validated
for
their
the ICAC server. There's an
right.
ICAC listserv, and there it is heavily vetted. In order for you to be on the ICAC listserv.
So
So
so here's the thing, like how do you start in building a relationship in that virtual environment?
you know, so again, I can tell you how it sort of happened for me, and it probably happens maybe differently for some people. But I started again, sort of posting on social media about what my office was doing. I was honestly trying to um, get the word out about the amazing work that my office was doing in an effort to get more resources, in an effort to educate the community about sort of the challenges that law enforcement is facing. And that resonated with a lot of people. So I was sort of educating, but I have moved towards really trying to provide resources. So value, as opposed to, hey, I was at this conference, which I do that sometimes,
For
but
sure.
hey, these are some of the amazing people that spoke, and this is what they spoke about. Go follow them, or this is an article I just read, or hey, I found this free resource, and trying to post about those types of things. And I think people naturally gravitate towards where they're being informed about
I
things.
think you hit on it. That's the key, is providing value.
Right.
Now, it could be sharing resources, but you also can provide value in conversation. So for some people starting out, it may not be comfortable for them to start out by sharing a quip or piece of information or a new thing they found. But where they can start to build community is in taking part in the conversation. And I kind of have a rule about this where I advise my mentees when I'm trying to encourage them to break out on social media. I'm not telling them to go, I mean, I want them to write blogs, I want them to share posts, but I'm not saying post every day. What I'm saying is take part in the conversation. So when somebody posts something and they share something, go read that article or go look at that thing, and then provide your feedback, provide input of value. So
Your
say,
perspective.
hey, that's great, isn't as helpful as, wow, that is actually applicable here, or I've
Right.
seen that in this other circumstance, or
My
this is great.
experience
My
is, yeah.
Or have you seen this other resource that also correlates to it? So adding to the conversation. But I also have a rule about how you should add. Some conversations get flooded, and I'm not just talking about the congratulations post. People change jobs,
Right.
people get promotions. We'll see hundreds of hits, but sometimes the conversations get lost because of the algorithm. So typically, my rule is you want to, if you're trying from a networking perspective, you want to be comments 3 through 5. So, in other words, you want to enter a conversation that's already started, but you
Yeah.
don't want to be so late to the conversation that other people aren't going to see your comment when they initially read the thread. Because, again, and when you're trying to network, you're trying to be part of the conversation. So, yes, your comments can still add value when they're number 17, but you're
Sure.
not going to be part of the conversation. The conversation is going to be those, and you want to be number 3 through 5 and not 1 and 2 because you want to enter a conversation it's already started when you're networking. Um, and to be honest, this is the same thing I suggest in person. So in person, and if there's anything I'm going to give that I think of value, it's this one tip, right? I call it closing the bagel.
Okay. I love it.
So when you're at a conference and you don't know anyone and you're just standing there, and you could just stand in the corner. That's what a lot of people do and just observe. But what
Wallflower.
a wallflower, but you want to be part, or you could just go to the vendor tables or whatever, but you need to become part of the conversation. So, what you should be doing during these networking breaks is looking for groups of people where the bagel hasn't been closed. So, typically, these are groups you never want to interrupt, and this is going to be the same rule I just said. It's awkward to go up to just one person who you've never met. And if they're, unless you already know something about them and you have a conversation starter. And two people you don't want to interrupt because it may be a private conversation. But if
Right.
you see three people and they're standing and a full circle hasn't formed, you can be in person number 4, 5, or 6 to close a bagel. So
Okay.
again, you want to make a bagel. You're trying to take those groups of three and turn them into circles. So you can do that by being number 4, 5, or 6. If the circle physically, when you look at it in your eyes, is open. If the bagel is already closed and people are standing that close, and maybe it's only 4 people, but the bagel is closed, don't go up to that group. The bagel's closed. You want to
Right.
make bagels. So that's what I call it. I call it making bagels. And if you do that, you'll find that there's opportunity for you to enter, listen, and then add value. Just like you did on that LinkedIn post. You read, you saw what other people had, and then you added value.
I mean, that makes so much sense. You know,
Yeah.
as you talk, I think that there are some people maybe that that's happened sort of naturally for me. I
Yes.
don't know why. Like I don't start conversations with people I don't know very easily, but for some reason in a conference setting, where everyone's sort of there for the same reason or for the same topic, it is much easier to try and be a part of a conversation that has already started.
Well, so it's interesting too, because in a digital forensics place and space, you have to anticipate that those conversations can take place about very technical things. And at a conference, you have an automatic conversation starter in talking about the keynote or what is in the vendor hall or a talk that you just saw that you liked. And so you
Yes.
already have these primers to have conversations about the things you care about. And it'll allow you to quickly identify if other people are in that same space or passion and introduce each other. So you want to talk about the topics at hand. You want to have the conversations with people. And I've got to say, some of the best networking, though, doesn't happen during the conference networking hours.
What?
What? Some of the best networking happens in the lobby. This is
Mm-hmm.
why at some of the conferences like DEFCON you'll hear, or other ShmooCon or whatever, you'll hear the topic of LobbyCon. And a lot of people, when they're new to a conference arena or they're not comfortable with this perspective, and I'm going to be 100% honest. Look, a lot of you who have seen me at places, you're like, Damn, Jessica is such an extrovert. She can go from zero dark 30 till late at night and she's having conversations and that's too much of an energy drain. Yo, you just don't see the times when I leave the floor and go to my room and go take a little breather. It's a lot. It's
It is
intense.
a lot. Being on all the
On all the
time
time is a lot.
is actually tiring.
But I would say, if I had the choice, because I need my breather, of being at the and some of the conference people are going to hate me for this, and I've put on many conferences, but if I have the choice between being at the conference networking hour or sitting in the lobby after the conference or in the morning before the conference, I'm going to take sitting in the lobby over that. I'm going to have
Interesting.
more interesting one on one. Well, they're not as crowded.
Sure,
I'm going to
that's
have
true.
more one on one type conversations or two on three type conversation, like, and there's not as much background noise, so it's a little bit easier to focus. I feel like I can have better connection with people at, oh hey, how was your run? And even if it's a couple of seconds, you're establishing rapport. But honestly, it's a little bit easier for me to think sometimes. I was gonna say it's easier for me to think at the bar, but I don't want people to misread that. I mean, just because it's not as loud sometimes as the official events. A lot of
The
official events have a
conference
lot of
hall can be
music
loud.
and a lot of
The
people,
the
and
bar
the
can be
conference
loud.
hall can be loud, but sometimes the lobby at the event
You know
is a little bit
that
calmer.
actually does make a lot of sense. You can have more direct one-on-one conversations with people, and your conversation starter of how was your run, or what conference,
What
what
talks
sections
did
do you
you
think
like
you'll go to?
today?
Yeah,
What sections are you going to? What's your schedule look like? And then you can find those moments for commonality, which is what we're all looking for, right? We're looking for moments of commonality with others. And you're also trying to learn about that person so that you can, again, develop that network. Now, there is a major failing that can happen in doing this, which online you automatically have a contact point for that person.
right.
In person, if you don't create that contact point, you're not going to have that contact point.
So how do you do that? Business cards, scanning. A lot of conferences have scanning
Okay.
mechanisms where you can contact, which are actually cumbersome to me, but
So here's the deal. I'm going to tell you why I like a good old fashioned business card. I like a good old fashioned business card. I'm just assuming that I have one in the drawer next to me. Um, that's actually a funny one. Here, I'll pick this one. Alex Caitness, you know who you are. You gave me your business card many, many years ago, and I happen to have it, and I'm going to cover up your personal details, but I want to
I
show
have a
something
stack
about a
right
business card.
here.
Right, right, right. We all have business cards near us. So this is a part of the business card that has no information on it, but what I want to point out is that this part of the business card is white. And the most important thing you can do on a business card is take a note. Take a note about what that person was interested in, about what, because, and I say this, we've had this conversation about talks. When you give Debbie and I have, not the rest of you, but I'll share my piece of thought about giving a conference talk about with all of you, because I'm going to then relate it to what I do when I'm communicating with people. And by the way, I have a failing here, and you'll all see it, and it's because of time. But what I try to do when I give a talk is, when you give a talk or when you're at a conference, you're inside a box, you're in a frame, right? Like when you give a talk, you're in the frame, you're giving your talk. Your talk is 30 minutes or 50 minutes, and when it's done, it's done. When you meet somebody at a conference, you meet them at the conference, and maybe you meet them at that same conference next year. But what I like to try to do is get things out of the box. I want to unpack the box. See, we're making bagels, we're getting things out of the
Right.
box. You make
Lots of
analogies. It's part of a
analogies.
forensicator. It's one of our key things we do, to explain things on the stand. We also have to do it when we're trying to explain things to each other. And also about taking methodologies that may seem natural. Like you said, this is the closing the bagel, something you naturally do. Taking them and explaining them is also something else we do as
Right.
forensicators, right? On the stand, we have to explain
Absolutely.
things that we do very naturally to others who are unfamiliar. So how do you get things out of the box? Well, in a presentation, you're going to point to an outside resource you're going to provide, because the purpose of giving a talk at a conference is to provide information. And you don't want people to forget it, and you want them to have access to it. So a key, and you'll see a lot of people do this, is and again, they're probably doing it naturally, is to provide something external to the talk. This could be a workflow diagram. It could be a GitHub code that you wrote and that you're sharing. It could be a blog post that you wrote to complement the talk, which, by the way, if you're giving a talk, biggest tip, write a complimentary blog post.
Right.
And that way, people who aren't at your talk still can learn some of the information, and people who are at your talk can have a reference point, but you point to that thing outside the talk. How many of us have been to a talk where there's a QR code on the screen? Almost all of us. That's getting you outside of the box. Not all speakers do that. I think you all should. So if you're listening to this and you give presentations,
I
do that.
agree.
If you don't give presentations, you should, but that's a completely different thing. Oh, it helps you network, by the way.
It does.
It does help you network. Give a
It does
talk,
help you network.
talk to people afterwards. And so business cards. Okay. Number
So,
one rule. Sorry. No, you.
no, go ahead. I was just going to make the point that networking is not just collecting these business cards.
Yes.
It is starting a conversation. It is
Starting a
helping
conversation.
each other. Yeah. So
Getting
okay,
out
that
of
was
the,
the only.
yeah, no, that's
It's
spot
not just
on.
collecting these business cards or
It's
these
getting
contacts.
out of the box of the conference. So how do
Right.
you get out? So number one thing, it's nice to give away your business card, but it's much more important for you to take someone else's, because that allows you to continue the conversation. If you give them your business card, which again you should carry business cards. If your organization doesn't make them for you, they're pretty inexpensive. You can usually get 100 for $10. It's worth it to do so that you can have conversations, even if it's just your Twitter handle, whatever you're comfortable with, your name and your a lot of I see a lot of students now are actually getting good at doing this when they're at events. But even if your organization doesn't have business cards, make them for your personal brand. I remember Phil Moore doing that at the DFIR Summit for This Week in Forensics. The first time I met him, we'll just put a long, long time ago on that answer as how long ago it was. All right, so here I've got Alex's business card and I've got this white space. In this white space, I'm going to write something down about that conversation, or some resource I want to send him, or something he's working on that maybe I'm going to suggest we could collaborate on because I have some other initiatives or ideas, or something that is I have met more people at conferences that have turned into talks at other conferences. Shout out
Yes.
Aaron Sparling. You know exactly about our evening bar filled conversations that have led to way too many talks and collaborations. But write something here, and you're going to write that note. And then when you get home, you are, some people are really, really good and they'll do them from the airport. Some people, but I'm going to tell you, I prefer to do it a week later, because if you do it at the airport, that other person's probably busy and probably slammed because they're trying to
Probably at
make
the
up.
airport
They're
also.
probably at the airport also, but they're probably also trying to catch up on all the work they missed while they were out of the
Right.
office. So I like to give it about a week. Now, to be honest, this is where I said I fail. A lot of times I just don't get through my SAC. And I
Right.
apologize if I've ever taken your business card and not contacted you. It's not because I didn't want to. And then you come across it and it's been way too long, and then you've got the awkward, it's been too long. Don't let it be awkward. It hasn't been too long. We're all busy. Just make the connection.
We are all
And you can
busy.
and you can so at any rate, just contact that person. I guess that's my
You know,
point.
a lot of
Think out of
times
the box.
I just ask them if they have a LinkedIn, and because I'm
That
very
works
active
too.
on LinkedIn, and I send them a connection request right there, and then we are connected, and I can see, what they're interested in, what they post. I can comment on what they post. So a lot of times I immediately connect with someone on LinkedIn. And I think if anybody's ever met me at conferences, it's not uncommon for me to say, hey, are you on LinkedIn? Hey, I'd love to connect with you. And then
That's a
do it
great
right
point.
there. So, because I do like to make those connections, because then I actually do have a way to contact them
Yes.
if I need to in the future, or if I want to carry on the conversation, or if I need something from them, so I do it sometimes immediately.
And a speaker at a talk, like if somebody's
Oh,
speaking, I'm adding them. Like I'm listening to them, and if it's, I mean, as
same.
long as it's something I'm interested in, I'm adding them right there. And so the whole point is just build that connection, because again, we want to get it doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn or the business card and
Right.
emailing them later, you want to get out of the box. I also like to talk to people where they like to be talked to. as a digital person, can be comfortable in any platform. I don't care if you're a Mastodon person or you're a Twitter person or a Blue Sky person, or I'll give a shout out to Heather Charpentier, Blue Ski. I'm teasing Heather. Or a LinkedIn person or a Discord server person. Wherever you like to connect, that's where I want to connect with you, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So I'll mention two other things about sort of ways to connect. So, I love the vendor halls
Mm,
conferences, and I am notorious for visiting virtually every booth and learning what they do. There's so much new technology that can help investigations, and even though I'm not conducting investigations anymore, I love to know what technology tools are being developed so that when I am in front of law enforcement or back at my old office, or hey, did you guys know that there is something that will solve that problem for you? And I talk to the vendors and connect with them. And so because tool providers are an important part of our network.
absolutely.
And the other thing that we
And
haven't mentioned yet,
they often know who else knows the thing. So
yes,
that sounds weird, but your tool vendors, the especially tool vendors, have a couple of people who are going to be at the booth, right?
right,
They have the salesperson, who is important to know for when you have a sales issue, but they often typically have a technical representative.
right,
This could be a solutions consultant, a
right,
sales engineer, a trainer, but
right,
somebody who represents that company who is more technical. And that person who's more technical usually is a prior examiner themselves or even a
right.
current examiner. And they often know a lot of other examiners because of that role. And a lot of times, even if they don't have an answer, they know who does. So they can be
Right,
a good bridge person in your networking to help you network with others.
exactly. So one of the things we haven't mentioned that I think is really cool. I know of a couple of local like meetups that digital forensics, I don't want to say clubs, but local meetups that have spun out of this. And I'm going to mention one because I just think it's
Please
really cool.
do.
There's one in Colorado called Hackers and Hops, and it's not
Mm,
necessarily digital forensics, but they literally meet at breweries and they bring their equipment. And it's actually organized by an examiner in Colorado. His name is Matt Beers, and Matt Hackers and Hops. How fun is that?
I love it.
Like,
I love Matt
and
Beers too. He's
a
very
lot of
fun.
it is cybersecurity related,
Mhm.
but why can't that happen in digital forensics
So
also? You could start your own sort of meetup and things like that. I think are so fun. They're face-to-face interactions and over a beer and some equipment and a challenge or a problem and everybody's trying to solve it. And how fun is that?
you can, absolutely. I'd say there's a couple of other places that I think are great. Colleges are good for having some of these kind of events. That's a great place to volunteer. Now, you may be like, I don't want to meet. Those young kids are going to be your future employees. So do
Yes.
it, do it. I mean, that's something we support, like the Central New York. If you didn't know, Hexordia, while we do have an office in DC Metro, we're actually headquartered in Central New York, upstate. And so we participated this year in the Central New York Hackathon. And Sarah went out there and we met tons of young people who were sure some of them will be future Hexordia employees, but also we're giving
Yes.
back to the community by doing that. Um, but you can also, don't forget, please don't sleep on HTCIA. Now, full disclosure, I am the first VP at the International Executive level, the committee there for HTCIA. I've been involved in HTCIA many years, but HTCIA has you have regional chapters, and those chapters put on 4 events a year minimum. Some of the chapters, like Northern California and Ottawa, meet nearly monthly. And then there's the at large chapter for people who aren't somewhere where there's geographically a chapter. And the reason I say HTCI kind of bridges that virtual and in person is since COVID, almost all of the chapters stream their meetings. So by being a member of one
Oh,
chapter, you get access to all of the chapters' talks. Yeah. So, like, the Illinois chapter just had a meeting, and there's a
With
there's
Lori,
meet
yeah.
there's like, well, yeah, Lori's the president there. She's awesome. I
Hmm.
think she just had Brett Shavers last week. But
I think she did.
there's
Yep.
there's right there's almost a meeting or two every single week, having different digital forensics experts, because you could be listening to something out of New England and they have Mark Spencer up, and then the Mid Atlantic chapter has somebody in Delaware Valley, and and then Ottawa chapter, and the Vancouver chapter. British Columbia chapter. It's not Vancouver chapter, it's British Columbia chapter, correction. But the chapters all over. And then the at large chapter has a big meeting coming up. Like, there's so many events, but so you can network both in person. And what's great about that is, if you are looking to speaking with your local chapter is a great way to start sharing information if you haven't. But it's just a great place to both network and learn. So much value in it. Highly suggest people join HTCIA
You
and
know,
get to
these
do that.
organizations and training, free training and podcasts like this one, and there are other really great podcasts. You know, we mention things and people and organizations, and go follow those people and those organizations on your preference of social media, and then see, it sort of expands from there. Then who are they talking about? What articles are they talking, what publications, what organizations are they involved in, or are they talking about? And it sort of it naturally builds your network.
Absolutely. Now, another good place to network, which you just mentioned, and I can't see how being, a training company, I didn't think of it, but at training classes, I have
Yes.
made so many friends who I met in a SANS class, or at, and so not just conferences, but actually going to classes, be them virtual or in person, connect with those people. But more importantly, the connections I made doing my master's in computer forensics at George Mason University, where I still teach. Not a shout out specifically to George Mason, but shout out to George Mason, but to any school where you can go. That is, it was a bunch of working professionals who were all getting our masters in computer forensics to further our degrees, and having conversations about our classes, debates about the content,
Right.
digging into assignments, study groups. What a great way to build relationships. Now, teaching at GMU, well, long after I did my master's, I know that my students nowadays on their own always form little Discord servers for their classes. So
Yeah.
they're all communicating about the class and about the work and everything else. It's actually funny because I was in Athens, and I was having trouble with my internet, and I was supposed to be teaching. And so I was trying to fix it. And one of the students pinged me, and I said, I can't get online, so I can't even get to my send email. They pinged me on LinkedIn because they knew I was
Uh-huh.
there. They're like, are we having class tonight? I'm like, I'm having trouble. I keep dropping off. And he's like, no problem. I'm in the Discord server. I'll let the rest of the class know.
I mean,
Because
so
they're all
and
sitting in a Discord server
I
together
bet
trying to figure out where I was, but
I bet those students don't even realize that they're networking, because
they
like
don't.
I didn't. Again, when I was in law enforcement, it was just something that I was naturally doing, and I really wasn't thinking of building my network, or
Right.
so that they are naturally building their network, and they probably don't even realize it.
So I would like to take a moment and just talk about some of the events that are coming up, because
Okay.
there's a lot, and maybe that would help people. So just thinking about, so we're recording this in May of 2025. So for June, right, we've got techno security. We've got DFR. Well, I guess that's it for June, right? Because June doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry. We have Digital Frontline. Totally forgot about the event that Hexordia and ArcPoint are
Of
putting on,
course.
which that one's virtual. So everyone. So Techno Security East is in Wilmington, North Carolina. That
You
happens
can
on the
still
East Coast
register.
every year. You can still register. Still time. We're doing. I've got a talk. Debbie's got some talks. Kim from our team has a talk. But there's lots of fantastic talks. Um, we've got the Digital Frontline. That's an all-day webinar for law enforcement, free. DFRWS US, it's their 25th anniversary this year. It's their Jubilee. That's a really cool event because it's the intersection of academia and practitioners. So if you're
Oh,
really interested about the cutting edge things that are coming out of academia in terms of research, that's going to be in Chicago this year. I love that event. That same week is the SANS DFIR Summit. SANS DFIR Summit is great because yes, it's in person in Salt Lake. Great talks. I know Aaron Sparling's got a cool talk there. He was telling me about it yesterday. Um, but that also does stream virtual live. So that's July. Then August, we've got the hacker trifecta, right? We've got B-Sides Las Vegas, Black Hat USA. We've got DEFCON, which I'll be out there for B-Sides Las Vegas and DEFCON. Diana Initiative usually takes place at the same time as well. So if you're going to Vegas for the quintessential hacker summer camp, me and my son will be there having fun. My son loves it. Also, at that same time, you have the Dallas Crimes Against Children's Conference
right,
for people who are in the ICAC world. So that's just bringing us through August, right? And then as you get into the fall, you've got things like Northwest ICAC, B-Sides
right,
New York, DFRWS and APAC. I didn't mean to be so US centric. There's DFRWS and APAC and EU every year. Objective by the Sea, right? There's lots of good stuff that happens in the fall. And that doesn't count all the things we already missed this year, right? Like Magnet and Celebrate both had their user summits. Magnet had their
right.
virtual summit, which is huge. And of course, we have the CPF every year there, which I love, and so glad Hixordia gets to participate in. But also like the Microsoft Digital Cybercrimes Conference. That's why I was in Greece. You've got legal tech for folks who are on the e-discovery and legal side of the house. You've got Wix, right? You've got the Women in Cybersecurity. You've got the National Cybercrime Conference. Debbie and I were just there a couple
That
of
we were
weeks
just
ago
there.
at
A lot of people were at
NCCC,
IASIS during that
and
time.
at that same time as IASIS, exactly, the IASIS training event. And then Debbie was just at Wisconsin ICAC last week. So there's
Yep.
just, and that's
And a
not
lot of
all
people
of
were
them.
coming from IACP Tech to Wisconsin.
Oh my
So,
gosh, there
you
there were
know,
just
it
so
was, it's
continuing
been,
on.
it actually has been the start of a heavy conference season.
But the whole point is that we don't expect people to be going to every event. No, even Debbie and I don't go to every event. It'd be impossible. We actually strategically go to different events, right? Because a lot of these are
Right,
happening at the same time. So, for example, I I can't go to the SAM Summit and to DFRWS US as much as I'd love to be at both. I can't. Uh, but it's very important for me because I'm very interested in the newest things that are happening in the vulnerability research and hacker community and
right.
exploits to go to DEF CON. That's very important to me. So it depends on what your interests are,
Priorities.
what makes the most sense. And there are events that I go to speak at, but then there are events I go to just to attend and learn. And it's
Right,
important to, most organizations and most companies, you get to go to one thing a year and just pick the thing that's most important to you and will
right.
work to you. But while you're there, make it work for you by networking, right?
Absolutely. Conferences are really, they're networking opportunities, but they're really training opportunities, for
Yes.
companies who are sending attendees and law enforcement agencies that are sending attendees. They are wanting their employees to learn something. So it is, and they have limited budgets, but I always was a huge proponent of training and a huge proponent of conferences and spent a lot of our budget on those things because I knew how important that was.
But you also knew that people were going to make contacts and have conversations and then have
Sure,
your go-to
absolutely.
people to reach
I
out to.
absolutely think it helps. We were able to solve so many problems or challenges simply by reaching out to who not just I had connections with, but people in my office had connections with.
Absolutely.
So,
So I think that anything else, or I think that kind
no,
of
I think I'd like to leave
closes
everybody
the
with a
bagel.
call to action, sort of.
Ooh,
I'm going to encourage listeners to just take one step this week to expand their professional network, whether it's reaching out to someone whose business card they collected at a conference, or reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, or even just joining a conversation and commenting, joining a group, or looking up local meetups, or how to join the Digital Forensics Discord server, or something. Just do one thing this week to expand your professional network.
And we're going to make that easy for you. We're going to provide all of the links for you for the Discord server, how to join HTCIA, all of these conferences that are coming up. So just do thing, one thing, and maybe it's just closing a bagel.
Right. There you go.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. See you next
Bye.
time.